Welcome to the Beauty Business Strategies Podcast, where we give salon, spa, and med spa owners quick tips to make more money, inspire your team, and create world-class client experiences.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Strategies Podcast. My name is Michael Yost. I am the president here at Strategies, and again, your host for our time together. Again, it's been great doing great interviews and having great conversations with business owners and leaders. And yet again today, we have another fantastic business owner and then I'm really excited to introduce you guys to, and her name is Yukiko Taylor. So, one of the reasons why we definitely wanted to connect with you is the fact that at our most recent awards, and again, every year Strategies, we do team-based awards each and every year, and you were our most recent winner and recipient in the category of Best Turnaround. When we talk about turnaround, what we're looking for is this. When we put out our awards, we're looking to hear stories about companies, especially in this category, that said, hey, we went from a point A to a point B, and it looked very different than what it was, right? And so when we're looking for the story, we're looking for companies that have said, listen, what have we done to change things or turn things around in a way, going from whatever direction that maybe we were going in to a direction that we really wanted to move toward. And so, again, the topic of that could be different for every person and every company, but give us a little bit to kind of set the table for us, Yukiko. Give us a little bit around your story when it came to this idea of a turnaround. You, again, moved from one place to another. What did your business, give us a sense of what your business did look like, and maybe what you wanted to do to make it look differently, to turn that business in another direction?
Yeah. So, I had started coaching with Strategies, shortly after I opened up OlyCurl. And OlyCurl grew from me just wanting a studio by myself to actually having to hire a team because of the fact that in curly hair, we sell a lot of product, and clients were stopping by during the day just to pick up product, and I would be in the middle of a client and I'd have to stop what I was doing, and it was kind of a nightmare. And I was like, oh, I need to hire a receptionist, and but this is bigger than me. And I had this huge waiting list for people to get in, and I couldn't get them in because I was just one person. And so it grew in that way, that just out of the have more hands doing this work. And so it was never really my intention to have a full-fledged salon. But when I decided to hire people, I knew I wanted to do it right. I wanted to do it correctly. And that's kind of one of my biggest guiding factors of my life is, I need to do it right and do it the correct way, do it the legal way. And so I had heard about Strategies through a friend who's also a Strategies client, and just heard all the great things. And I'm like, wow, this is really the way to do business, like every other company in the world does business except for hair salons. So so that's how I got started. And when I say that I want to do things the right way and the best way, sometimes I get tunnel vision. And so that kind of sets things up for how I kind of operated my business, right? I, had hired my first stylist, and eventually let her go. And then I hired another stylist, and one of the things about, being team-based and team-based pay is that one of the things I was really proud of is that, I never cut hours, right? And so because, in commission salons, you hear about stylists that go in and, "Oh, well, we're not booked this afternoon, so you can just go home," or, "We're not booked for a few hours, so you can just have a 3-hour lunch break," type of thing, and I didn't wanna be that owner that kind of fudged, you know, um, work hours or mess with people's paychecks. I wanted to pay people fairly and make sure that they got, what they earned, and, there wasn't a lot of, sitting around time. So, so part of, me with my good intentions of, you know, wanting to pay people fairly and well, was that, at the end of a day, um, or not quite to the end of the day, like say there's 30 minutes left, it would be like, oh, well, now's a good time. Let's clean up. Um, or if I would still be working, they would clean up rather than, hey, Yukiko, do you mind if I go home a little early? My good intention was I don't want to cut your paycheck. So no. And let's just stay here until, the time, till the day is done. And so, and I it was that way in a lot of things, and I maybe would say that I was somewhat rigid. And so then the great shutdown happened, and in our state, I had opted out of unemployment because I was, a self-employed employee of my company. And when I incorporated my company, I said to myself, in what world, what universe would I not be able to work in my own company? And I couldn't come up with anything. So, then the universe says COVID. Ah. Um, but so I had opted out of unemployment. And when the shutdown first happened, all the chatter was, owners would not get unemployment because we didn't pay into unemployment. And so I'm like, okay, well, great. What am I going to do with my time with this? Who knows how long we'll be shut down. And so I was like, well, I could get a job. I saw on I don't even know where I was looking, but there was a warehouse that was hiring warehouse workers. So I was like, "Oh, well, let me just go work in a warehouse for a while." And so, I let other people know, colleagues of mine that are booth renters, if you're not gonna get unemployment, maybe you wanna go and fill out an application with me. We can go do this together. And so anyway, I ended up getting hired at the warehouse and worked at the warehouse for about, I want to say 7 weeks. And our shutdown, um, I don't even know how long it was. It was March 31st to March 17th to May 31st. And so, anyways, I worked at the warehouse for about 6 or 7 weeks, and I was a receiver, and the warehouse was a Trader Joe's warehouse. So we were moving Trader Joe's food, and it was a humbling experience working at a warehouse, and going from top top dog like in my salon to like bottom rung of the totem pole in this warehouse environment. And it was pretty humbling, but I learned so many lessons while I was there. And honestly, going back into that kind of position and seeing how management and supervisors related to the worker bees like myself and my colleagues there was very much like looking into a mirror and seeing where I was really falling short of what I felt like I should have been doing. And I have so many great applicable lessons from that. And in fact, I would come home every day driving home thinking, of the things that I learned and just ruminating on the interactions I had with the supervisors and the management and how that could have gone differently and how I might do that differently if the roles were reversed. So I saw how they trained people, and I saw, just that us versus them mentality, and that was kinda like a mirror, like, wow, there is an us versus mentality kind of in my own salon, and, that I hadn't noticed before. But being thrown into this environment, I could really see it, and I could see the disgruntledness of all the people I worked with at the warehouse, how they looked at the management. It was never in a favorable light because of the way that the management treated the warehouse workers. Um, so if you I don't know, do you want me to get specific? Because there are great lessons. I have, an outline. I mean, I didn't bring it because I didn't want it to,
Right, right.
distract me,
So I
but
love so again, you shared a lot, a lot there, and I love that. I love everything you shared. But I think the interesting point is kind of where you just were ending right there, especially, which is so my question is going to be in a kind of that follow up, like you were just kind of asking yourself is, you know, here you are a business owner, in the time of COVID, put in a situation where it's like, yeah, I got to go find another opportunity. Found that opportunity, and like I said, went from like I said, being the top dog to now, I'm just, I'm a worker at like I said, kind of your description again, and that bottom rung right now in this situation. But to get a chance to observe the whole picture from the eyes of a leader in many ways. And so I
mhm,
guess the question I would have then is, all right, let's fast forward ourselves to, that time has ended. You're back able to reopen your company and get back open after the COVID shutdown and everything. What did you bring out? Let's stay with like, what are the one, maybe two things that were the biggest influences from that time there that you said, you know what, I'm going to go back now with my team and this is going to look what did you do differently? How did you engage differently? What was different? Like, give me one or two big highlights that really was like that lesson learned from kind of the shoe being on the other foot.
sure. Well, I mentioned, the rigidity with the time and making sure that we worked every minute of the day. And, it was a huge eye opener for me because, in the warehouse, they had this system for a few weeks that they were offering a $50 bonus if you worked all 40 hours of your week, right? So, um, I was in receiving, and you only receive when there's a truck, and sometimes on a Sunday, there's two trucks. I have to work this 8-hour shift, and they don't have other tasks, like, they don't have side work for receivers to do, so we're just literally sitting around, and, so, I would balance out, okay, I could go home early and spend the rest of my Sunday with my husband because 'cause I've already received the two purchase orders that were coming in for that day, or I could stick around to earn another $50 in my paycheck, right? And so when I came back to work, that really resonated with me that, that extra $50 wasn't worth as much as the time with my husband at home, right? Living life. So for me, it was like seeing this picture of, a healthy work life balance. And that was one of the first things I initiated when we came back to work. Was actually having a 1 hour lunch break. That's where we close the actual salon and um, clock out and go enjoy your lunch. And then we come back feeling refreshed. And then I also, yeah, if a stylist was finished a little bit early and, was requesting to leave for lunch, 10 or 15 minutes early? Sure, yeah, no problem. Go ahead, you know. I mean, obviously they know that they clock out and I don't have to reiterate to them that, you're not getting paid for that time, right? Like this affects your paycheck, right? Like, which in my mind before, well, that'll affect your paycheck if you leave early, type of thing. But I realized in working at the warehouse, it's like, well, duh, of course I know that if I'm clocked out, I'm not getting paid. And so that rigidity, really softened, and just the importance of work-life balance really came into view from that. So, that was definitely one of the things. The other thing was, as a leader, I had I've taken all the communication classes and things that Strategies offers, and then other webinars and other places that offer communication training. And the pat on the back, the attaboy, the hey you rock type of comments always, before I worked at the warehouse, felt empty to me. And, to me, I kind of had more of a, you know, good job on that, good job on doing your job, type of thing. And when I worked at the warehouse, every little um, accomplishment, like the first time I didn't over receive in a whole day. So in a warehouse, you can't over receive. It's okay to under receive because then you can fix it when they catch it, and I can go in and fix it and just receive more. But if you over receive, then that's a problem for the people behind the glass window, right? So the first, I had over received a few times and gotten in trouble, and someone wrote me up and stuff like that. But I didn't actually have really good training, um, which was another point. But the first day I didn't over receive like the whole morning. I went up to the supervisor and I said, "Hey, Priestley, I didn't over receive at all this morning." And he goes, "Well, you're not supposed to." And I was like, "Okay, Priestley, do you see this? Do you see my shoulder?" And he goes, "Yeah, I see your shoulder." I'm like, "Pat it. Just pat it. And then say, 'Good job, Yukiko.'" And that to me, would mean more to me um, at that point, right? Because like it was an accomplishment and it should be noted. And so I came back to OlyCurl with a renewed sense, or a different view of how much those pats on the shoulders actually mean to people. And I can now, you know, do that or high five, my staff, with from a genuine place, not like, "Okay, you did your job." It's more like, "Wow, you really, rocked that today. It went smoothly." And so there was a real shift in my thinking and how genuine, um, how those small accomplishments should be acknowledged.
I
So
love that. Yeah,
that
I was
was
going to say,
that was kind of
yeah, I mean, I love that you brought that up, and it's such a oh man, what an important point for everyone that's kind of listening in. And we talk about that a lot, but I think Alexi, the way you illustrate it is so spot on because I think sometimes, and this, if I understand what you're saying right, sometimes it's like before you'd be like, well, just a little response like that to be again, thanks for doing your job kind of thing, and does it really have that much of an impact? And we kind of over process it in our brain but the reality is, as you discovered, like, man, when the shoe was on the other foot, then no, that appreciation meant more than, maybe a bigger action might have ever meant. Just the acknowledgement and recognition of a job well done changes up things in a powerful way. So I love what you're illustrating here. What other, so when you thought about, as you reflect on that experience and now as a business, again, coming back into the role as the business owner, the business leader, you shared some kind of cool things there. How are you? So let me ask this: in the day to day now, you know, what are the things that you do that you hope you now never take for granted? Because maybe in a way, like prior to this kind of experience that you had, outside of the, in the different work environment, coming back into your business, creating and growing a business in the way that you want to, what are the things that you hope you never take for granted every day?
Yeah, I I really don't want to take my staff for granted, you know? Whereas I think I did take them for granted before, you know? They don't have to show up every day, you know? And they do make a decision every day, just like I made a decision every day going to the warehouse. Like, okay, I'm going to show up for my work. I'm going to do a good job because, you know, that's my own integrity on the line. Um, and, I recognize that now. It's like, I feel like my eyes have been open to where, it wasn't like I didn't want to acknowledge my staff for a job well done. It's not like I didn't want to acknowledge that. I just had a really hard time grasping for things to acknowledge them on, right? And but now that my eyes have been open, I can see like all the little things and I can see all their little efforts that they are trying to improve. I can see that more now. So I feel like the experience I went through has had, changed me so much that I have come back to my business and just kind of as a new person. And then having the opportunity to have a turnover in staff also enabled me to, you know, change in a way that, where I felt like my integrity wasn't being questioned, Um, I grew up in the military and we moved about every 3, 4 years. And I felt like every time we moved, it was like an opportunity to be someone different. If what I did last time and the person who I was and the personality that I had exuded didn't quite work out for me in our last location, moving to a new school and new friends, I could like change things up and see if something else worked better. And I feel like this actually was kind of something like that. Um, you know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And what I like about what you're saying, if I'm gonna kind of try and maybe read between the lines a little bit here, if I heard what you're saying, because I think what you just shared is actually really pretty powerful. It sounds as though I can definitely, I can't relate to, but I can understand what you're saying when you said, "Hey, listen, we moved every few years," and so again, if one thing wasn't working, I kind of changed it up a little bit to see, if that was received better that in the next move. Sounds to me, if I'm going to interpret it this way, tell me if I'm on base or not when,
Mhm.
after I finish this off, is so it sounds as though, you know, at one point you were a business owner just doing the way you thought was the best way to do it. It wasn't like you were intentionally going about things in a negative way or necessarily even a wrong way. But in other words, you were kind of putting out there as this business owner the way you felt like you should be a business owner. Well, then you kind of, again, COVID happens and then this whole experience happens and you come back and it almost, if I'm getting this right, it's almost like you came back going, not only have I learned a lot, but I see things in a little different way. And again, not only from from that work experience in the warehouse to maybe some more education that you've done, maybe other things that you read, and again, absorbing different, outlets of material. But sounds as though you came back then and said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a little different leader than I was prior. Is that fair?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it was just a real opportunity because, you know, being at the warehouse really allowed me to see, the impersonal way that I was running my company. And while my intentions were always good, I always had good intentions, not wanting to cut someone on their paycheck is a good intention. But that needs to be balanced out with, well, what do they feel like? You know, maybe that extra 10 minutes, when I would leave the warehouse, you know, 30 minutes early or 10 minutes early or whatever, I would always feel like, wow, this is cool. Kind of like skipping school, or not skipping school because I wasn't a bad kid, but more like when you have a dental appointment, right? And you get pulled out of school and you feel like you're playing hooky and getting away with something, and all the kids at school are still at school, and it's kind of a neat feeling to be out of work when you know that work is still going on, or that the hours are still in operation. And it is kind of a freeing feeling to just be able to walk away from work a few minutes early, and that's what I saw. And so it was like looking in a mirror and saying, wow, the rigidity with which I ran my company was probably not the best,
Right.
and, you know, not that I'm the best. Well, actually, this says I'm the best.
It does. It's a major award, Yukiko. It's a major award.
Major award, yeah, fragile. Must be Italian, right? So, yeah. So I, it's always a growing process. I have really started to embrace the growth. It was painful. It was painful to have to look in a mirror and realize the way I was going wasn't actually connecting me with my team, right? Um, but now I I know there's much more of a connection between us and a mutual respect. I am at least 15 years older than my oldest staff member. Sorry, I'm a crier. There you go. Pause. This part will be edited out, right? So I'm at least 15 or 17 years older than my oldest staff member. And so, I've read books on the generational differences, and learning about the strengths of millennials, zillennials, and Generation Z, right? Um, and realizing and appreciating the things that they bring to the table, has been huge too. So, of course, we are of the greatest generation, right? The X Gen, and hard workers, and we're the total package, right? Uh, but as I work with these young people, I realize they have much better multitasking skills than I do, and let's put that to use. I just love it. They have so much more things firing off in their brains than I do, and I appreciate it so much. The everything that they bring to the table has been great, and being able to recognize for them for that also, I think, has been a real gift. Whereas before, I looked at it a little bit differently.
Right.
Those millennials.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I've really come to appreciate my team and not take them for granted.
Well, I think that's really powerful. I mean, again, man, you know, just even that last segment that you just were, what you're just speaking on there, we could do 2 or 3 more conversations and podcasts just out of that, some of the content that you just were speaking on there. I love the fact that, I think what was so powerful for me is the fact that, the realization, as leaders, and you said it, the realization is the fact that, man, you're just doing your best. I mean, we're just trying to do our best. It wasn't anything, anything more than that. We're just trying to do our best, but then having to recognize the fact that, sometimes it's like, well, wait a second, maybe, I could have done that differently. And then that would have exuded my best. And, it doesn't mean, I think sometimes owners can, I don't know if you fought with this at all or not, but let me know if you did actually. When you kind of came to that realization where it's just like, I know I'm trying my best, but you recognize the fact that, man, I need to do things differently. I think that can do one of two things. It can maybe either make us feel as though that, as leaders, that maybe we failed in one sense or another, or did you find it more empowering to say, okay, I can accept that, but I'm moving forward this way? Or was it a little combination of both? I mean, did you ever have that self-doubt like in that time? Or I mean, how'd that resonate with you?
Oh, of course. I lost the majority of my team right before the shutdown, and I was left with a receptionist. It was me and a receptionist, and she had been with me about a year. And she had some conflicting feelings about me. And, she told me as much. She didn't feel like she trusted me, And I, I think that had my whole team been intact and I came back with this renewed sense of, it would have been a lot of humble pie. um, apologies would had to be made. So I think that the fact that things fell apart right before the shutdown was probably a gift. Because I could take that one receptionist and come back and have that one conversation, not four. Right? And say, okay, well, this is how we're, going to do things. I learned so much during the shutdown. And, the biggest thing I learned was how much I appreciate you, and we really had a turnaround in our relationship, and we supported one another. And for the first time, you know, she came to me one day and we were like fully booked and we were trying to get everybody in after the shutdown. It was just really cram packed. And it was the first time any of my coworkers said to me, "How can I best support you today?" And that moment, I think, brought everything just kind of whoosh. And is what made me realize that now we are on a mutual uh ground of respect, right? And appreciating one another. I had never up to that point had a staff member take my feelings or my overwhelmedness, if I can just make words, um, into consideration, and she did, and it was jarring, but made me feel like, okay, this can be okay, you know. And so I think that moment was kind of almost our, mutual apologies to one another, and so yeah, it is hard to feel like you failed. Um, but I'm just one of those people that, I get it in my head that I want to do this thing and I want to accomplish this thing. And um, this terrible um, analogy comes to mind, or saying, but I won't say it. But that I conquer it, right? That I can accomplish, what I set out to accomplish. I don't fail very often, and it is humbling when I do. But I don't really look at it as a failure. I really look at it as a gift for moving forward. You know, there's a thousand other ways I could have failed that would have been much more painful.
Mm,
And some might think that working in a warehouse was one of the worst ways, but I really look at it as it was such a great opportunity. Um, and then coming back and implementing the things I learned in real life situations, um, you know, it's definitely a victory. Definitely.
absolutely. I mean, what you share again, it's just so powerful the way, you can tell. I mean, just your heart for how you're speaking and things like that. So, I mean, just thank you so much for just sharing that, with all of us, because again, it's so powerful and it reaches, because I think a lot of leaders out there and a lot of business owners that are out there right now listening to this can, absolutely relate to, the feeling that what you're expressing. And also at the same time, what I love is the fact that, this is something, again, more, it's quite obvious for anyone listening. If you wondered at the beginning of this, like, what does a great turnaround look like? Uh, Right here. This is exactly why Yukiko has a major award. And I know we have some fun with that, but and I don't mean to have fun with it to diminish the work that you did, because again, what you achieved, you deserve recognition for from what you've done. I think that's very clear to anyone listening here. And actually, one of the questions I usually like to ask, but I think you just already answered it, honestly, is, what do you consider one of your greatest achievements as a team? And I think that, really what you just shared when the team came to you and just said, basically, how can I support you? I mean, there's and how can I support this company? And that attitude is what a great achievement, that is for sure. So, with that in mind, I think this is a perfect spot to kind of wrap today up. What you shared, Yukiko, has been so awesome, so powerful. I know we want to tap in more, and I'd love to have some more conversations just around this whole experience piece. And again, just the genuine person that you are. It's so awesome to talk to. So thank you so much for sharing what you did today. And I know that everyone listening appreciates it. So again, thank you, Yukiko.
Yeah, you're welcome. I really appreciate it.
No problem. No problem. With that in mind, we will wrap today up. Again, thank you all for joining us. And again, be on the lookout, because we will again continue to have more great conversations and interviews in the future. So we'll see you again soon.
Thanks again for listening to the Beauty Business Strategies podcast. If you like this episode, be sure to hit follow. And please share the episode link with anyone who you think could benefit from today's content. To learn more about how strategies can help create more fun, profit, and growth potential for you, your company, and your team, we invite you to schedule a free 60-minute strategy session by clicking the direct link in the description of this episode. There you'll also find links to our wide array of coaching, seminar, and learning opportunities, all of which can be found at strategies.com.